Good morning. Sorry. My name is Pavani, and this is Vajra. And it is our joy to be with you this morning. So I have to start with a joke. So there was a Hindu boy and a Catholic boy. And the Catholic boy said to the Hindu boy, "My Jesus knows a lot more than your Krishna." And the Hindu boy replied, "Well, of course your Jesus knows more. You tell him everything." Our topic today, the inner kingdom, made me reflect on my own inward journey and the first significant experience I had on that journey. And it's something I've mentioned before. It's when I attended the Northwest Outward Bound School after the summer after my senior year in high school. And it was a 23-day course with a small group and 2 instructors. I was coming from California. I had never traveled alone. I didn't know anyone. And we were really out in the wilderness. There were no amenities whatsoever. And it was physically very challenging and it was scary. And I found myself feeling quite homesick and just wanting to leave. But I knew that I had to finish the course. About a week into it, I had something started to happen inside of me. One day we were hiking up a glacier, and it took us several hours to hike up this glacier. We had 50-pound packs. The boys in our group shot ahead, and there were fewer girls in the group, and the other girls were understandably complaining about how hard this was. It was. And though I felt the same way, I could see that complaining about it was not going to be a very easy way to get up that glacier. So from deep inside of me, this determination welled up in me to keep up with the boys. And I wasn't physically able to do that. So I ended up in the middle with the boys ahead of me and the girls behind me. And instinctively, again from deep within, I started saying an affirmation. And it was, "I'm getting stronger with every step. I'm getting stronger with every step." And I said that the entire way up that glacier. When we all got to the plateau, we then ascended a peak, roped together with ice axes, and then hiked down and had crevasse rescue school, where someone went down into the crevasse, that big crevasse in the ice, and we had to learn how to get them out. So it was a big day, and we were all exhausted. And hiking to where we were going to spend the night, somehow we all lost sight of our instructors, the whole group. And we were completely lost, exhausted and lost for several hours. And the oddest thing happened to me. Again, it was something from deep within. The more dire our situation became, the more positive and cheerful I felt. And it certainly wasn't being reflected in the people around me. Our instructors actually ended up finding us and gave us quite a lecture because it was our lack of focus that had caused that incident. And at the end of the course, they have a final expedition. It's a 3-day expedition. They take all the groups, there's been several groups that would have been doing the same course, combine them, and send them out with maps to do a certain trek. And the instructors get together and choose leaders. Well, to my terror, they chose me as a finals leader. Not only that, they gave me a group of girls that all had terrible blisters on their feet. So the first day out, there was one girl who was having such a hard time that every about 100 feet, she would sit down in the middle of the trail and say, I just can't go on. And so we managed to hobble a little ways that day and find a place to spend the night. And I was looking at the map, and I realized that we were completely lost. I had no idea where we were. And so I didn't tell anybody. So the next day, we started out, and somehow it seemed like we were starting to find our way. Looked like it was matching the map. And we were coming down a slope, a rocky slope, and I lost my footing and fell with my heavy pack all the way down the slope and injured my knee. Well, I was in shock. The girls didn't know what to do. So I just stood up and kept walking. And I remember at one point starting to sing. And that's when the girls figured out they'd better do something, because I was acting a little strangely. So they sat me down, and two of them went to the next checkpoint to find instructors and bring them back. Well, the instructors realized they had to get me out. So we were way up there. There was snow. The only thing they could do was to put me in a sleeping bag and harness up to it and drag me through the snow. So there I am being dragged through the snow. And you know, all that time, every day I had wanted to leave. And now I was getting out. And over the 6 hours that it took for them to get me out, this unexpected feeling arose in me, and that was despair. I felt despair that I was being taken back to civilization. And I remember seeing the picnic tables at the park at the bottom, and how depressing that was. And then they took me to the house where the instructors were staying, and I held off as long as possible to take a bath. Now, I had been out 19 days, so I was pretty dirty. But it felt like my last connection to that experience. And so I was so sad when finally I had to take that bath. Now, why would I have that response? Isn't it just like how we often go through our challenges in life? We just want the darn thing to be over with, right? And then when it is, later on, we look back and we see what a blessing it was, because of what that challenge drew from within us. That outward bound experience drew from within me a deeper experience of myself than I had ever had. And it ignited a longing for that experience. Swami Kriyananda writes in his book, The Promise of Immortality, to know oneself, and that's a capital S, to know oneself to its ultimate depth is to know God. So that had been my first step into the inner kingdom. But what is that ultimate depth and that true self? We know that it's not our personalities, because those are temporary. Yogananda said that when he had to take on a human body and personality, it felt like putting on a coat on a hot day. We know it's not even the qualities that we've developed over many lifetimes. Yogananda also said that God created the villain so that we would learn to become the hero. But even our identification with qualities such as kindness and compassion and all the things we try to develop have to be let go of to find our true selves. So how do we do that? Well, I'm sure you could guess the next word that I would say. Meditation, of course. And there's also something else that I wanted to just there's another part to it that I wanted to share about because I had a recent revelation about it. And that part is knowing. So we've been taught that if we only knew completely that we were free in this moment, we would be free. It's just our belief that we aren't that keeps us from that. And I've heard that over many years, and it's been hard for me to get my consciousness around because it just feels like there's, I mean, it makes sense, but there's so many cross currents within us, or within me, you know, how do you get everything moving in that one direction? And then recently I heard an explanation of time that shed some light on that. And that is that time is happening, all time is happening now. That's not a new concept. The past is happening now, the present, but also, this is what the revelation was for me, the future is happening now as well. If the future is happening now, that means, since we're all going to become self-realized, our self-realization is happening now. And that's what we can attune to and practice knowing and feel. Because that self is eternal, changeless, ever blissful, the fulfillment of everything we've ever sought. The inner kingdom really is happily ever after. God bless you.
Oops. Well, good morning to you all. I realized as soon as I read that the themes of that were woven through Sunday service today were the inner kingdom and truthfulness, that what I needed to talk about were castor oil, the dread pirate Roberts, and the spine. Should be fairly self-evident. We live in a world, we live in a culture where our relationship to diet has become somewhat obsessive, so we say. We are constantly in search for that which is gluten-free, soy-free, nut-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, non-GMO, vegetarian, vegan, paleo, low-fat, low-carb, low cholesterol. I think we reached a plateau, and at the community dinner the other night, I saw 2 serving dishes. One was gluten-free, and the other was non-gluten-free. Well, I think I found the answer. And I didn't see it in a Facebook posting, and I didn't see it in a YouTube video. I got it from the autobiography. It's castor oil. Sri Yukteswar told Master a story of his own personal experience with Lahiri Mahashai, his guru. When Yukteswar was a young disciple, he had a guru bhai, and the two of them were inseparable. His name was Rama, and they spent a lot of time together at Lahiri's feet, usually late at night because Rama was rather shy and didn't like crowds. Rama contracted Asiatic cholera, and the doctors were really despairing of his life. So Yukteswar went in something of a panic to Lahiri and begged him to intercede. And Yukteswar, who seemed to be in an inexplicably jovial mood, said, "The doctors are attending him. I'm sure he'll be fine." Somewhat relieved, Yukteswar went back to where Rama was, only to find that the doctors were saying that he's only got 2 or 3 hours left. There's nothing more we can do. Again, really upset and agitated, he went back to Lahiri. And there was Lahiri blithely dismissing him and saying, "Oh, the doctors are very conscientious. I'm sure Rama will be fine." And again, a little bit less certain, Yukteswar went back to find that the doctors had gone and left a note saying, "There's nothing more we can do. It's hopeless." Yukteswar sat at his bedside as he breathed his last gasp and asked him, "Tell Lahiri that I'm gone, and please ask him to bless my body before the final rites." Distraught, Yukteswar went back to Lahiri, who was as chipper as ever, and Lahiri said to him, "So, how's Ramu doing now?" And Yukteswar, quite distraught, said, "Well, you will see for yourself when they bring his body by on the way to being cremated." So did Lahiri bat an eye? Was he apologetic? Was he sympathetic? No, he said, "Yukteswar, control yourself. Sit calmly and meditate." So Yukteswar sat and meditated all afternoon, into the evening, all evening, into the night, all night long he meditated. Came the dawn. Lahiri finally spoke to him and said, "Yukteswar, I see that you're still disturbed. Why didn't you tell me that you were expecting me to provide some outward form of support for Rama in the form of a medication? I'll tell you what. Take some of the oil from that lamp over there, some crude castor oil in the lamp. Put it in a bottle, take it to Rama, put 7 drops in his mouth." Yukteswar said, "Sir, I don't think the castor oil is going to do much. He's been dead since noon yesterday." Here he said, "Do as I tell you." And Yukteswar did. It was quite a challenge because Rama was at this point stiff as a board from rigor mortis. He had to pry open his lips and use the cork from the bottle to hold it open enough for him to get the 7 drops on his clenched teeth. As the 7th drop hit his mouth, a violent tremor went through his body and Rama sat bolt upright. Said, "Lahiri Mahashaya appeared to me in a blazing light. He said to me, 'Rama, arise from your sleep. Come with Yukteswar to see me.' He got up out of bed, dressed himself, and set off for Lahiri Mahashaya's home, Yukteswar following him. And he prostrated himself at the Guru's feet. Lahiri couldn't help chiding Yukteswar. He said, "So, Yukteswar, from now on, you'll have to carry a bottle of castor oil with you wherever you go. And whenever you see a corpse, just put 7 drops. Obviously, castor oil has the power to overcome even death itself." Well, Yukteswar knew when he'd been had. He said, "Sir, I realize my error. Please explain it to me." And Lahiri said, "Yukteswar, I told you twice that Rama would be well, but you didn't fully believe me. I also said the doctors would be in attendance, but I didn't say that the doctors would be able to cure him. Those 2 statements were not causally related. I didn't want to interfere with the business of the doctors. They need to make a living too. But in the future, remember, always know that the inexhaustible Param Atman, the Supreme Soul, can heal anyone, doctor or no doctor. So we do what we need to do, due diligence. We try to get our diets as together as we can, as best we know them. We go to the doctor, we have the lab tests, we go to the acupuncturist, we go to the herbalist, all of these things we do. But remember that the illness, the cure, all of it comes from God. And the only reason that it's there is to help us to learn the lessons that we need to learn to find our way back to God. So who are we anyway that we take maintaining this physical form so seriously, that we're so wrapped up in the image that we project to the world around us? We live in a world where that's a very precarious thing. A lifetime of good works in this day and age can be completely ruined overnight by a careless tweet that goes viral. Or a moment, the revelation of a moment of bad judgment in the distant past. It can ruin a life. What security is there in that, no matter what we do? Yukteswar pointed out, forget the past. The vanished lives of all men are dark with many shames. Human conduct is ever unreliable until anchored in the divine. We've all had many lives. We've all done many things. This is where the dread pirate Robert comes in. A modern fictional scripture known as The Princess Bride. Many of you may be familiar with it. It has many followers. The main character, Wesley, is revealed to be, at one point, the dread pirate Roberts. And he goes on to explain that actually he only recently became the dread pirate Roberts. He had been kidnapped by the previous dread pirate Roberts, Ryan, who took a liking to him and decided that he was tired of the pirate business and that it was time to turn it over to somebody else. So Ryan put into port, dismissed all his crew, brought on a whole fresh crew, and started relating to Wesley as the dread pirate Roberts. And he explained, you see, the thought of Ryan, the scourge of the seven seas, just doesn't carry any weight. It doesn't have any magnetism. The persona of the dread pirate Roberts is what it's all about. So Wesley became the dread pirate Roberts. Now, Ryan wasn't the original dread pirate Roberts either. He got it from a man named Cummerbund, who got it in turn from the original dread pirate Roberts. Now, his name was not known, but it was known that he had retired a very wealthy man in Patagonia 15 years earlier. Well, it occurred to me that this is very much like what we do. We check into the astral port there. We take on a persona, we take on an identity, and we set sail once again into the sea of duality with a whole fresh personality. And we've done it all, we've been it all. We've been saints, we've been sinners, we've been pirates, we've been kings, we've been rich, we've been poor, top to bottom, sideways. It doesn't matter, we've done it all. The net score is always karmically zero. It's built in. That's where it all winds up. Zilch, nothing, nada. But, as Yukteswar also pointed out, the real difference is that everything in future will improve if you are making a spiritual effort now. That's the difference. That's the turning point, when we start to make that spiritual effort. So if the answer isn't in our diets, and if the answer isn't in the outward manifestations that we produce in any given lifetime, what's left? The truth. And what is the truth? Swami says in a play that he wrote, the Peace Treaty, truth alone is, all else is mere froth. Sooner or later, depending on men's constancy, the truth must emerge victorious. The truth is who we really are at the very deepest level of our beings. And we have the opportunity to get in touch with that truth, to express that truth through the choices that we make at every moment of our lives. And those choices in turn are informed by the attunement we feel, the connection that we feel with the divine. When we make the conscious choice to aspire to express that inner light, when we seek that light in meditation, when we open our hearts in compassion to others, when we listen for the many ways that God tries to provide us with the guidance of what we should do and how we should do it, we generate a magnetism. And what that magnetism does is it takes all those thwarting cross currents of ego and it pulls them together. And it frees the energy to come up the spine. And it allows us to get in touch with that attunement, with that divine light. It allows us to experience the joy that is our own true nature, is our only nature, and is in fact our only reason for living. As Swami said, even in death, if you cling to truth, then truth and your own soul as well must be victorious at last. I'd like to close with a reading from Whispers, following on our nautical theme. O Divine Father, be thou the captain of the ship of my daily struggles. Bring it safely to the shore of final fulfillment.